A remote border town has been rocked by the murder of one of its brightest young stars.
We don't have a suspect and we don't have a person of interest.
Micaela is not your typical teenager.
She was the one out of all three of us girls that I say was just going down the path you would want any child to go down. She was doing it the right way. He would never hurt her. I don't understand why he ended up confessing to it. I'm still like, there's something more to this story.
They clearly believe that you were the one really behind this.
Thursday, March 3rd, 2011. Micaela Costanzo was at work, watching the clock tick a little too slowly. She was waiting for a simple text, just one message from her daughter Micaela, to say she made it home safe. Today wasn't like most days. The usual routine had been broken. Her older daughter and son-in-law, who always drove Micaela home, were out of town, but Celia hadn't worried too much. Home was only a mile away, and for Micaela, a mile was nothing. She was a star on the track team. But the hours began to stretch, and Micaela never called. Celia dialed her daughter's phone. No answer. She called again. This time, someone pressed decline, and that's when the alarm bells started screaming in her head, because Micaela never ignored calls from her family, especially not from her mother. She reached out to her oldest daughter in Vegas, who told her to stay calm. Maybe Mickey was just staying after school to prep for track. But that explanation didn't land right. Not for Celia. She grabbed her things, left work early, and rushed home. When she opened the door, she found her younger daughter DJ, but no sign of Micaela. She asked where her sister was. DJ shook her head. She'd been trying to reach her too. No answer. That's when reality shifted. That's when a quiet desert town was about to unravel. Why would a girl so careful, so consistent, suddenly disappear without a word? Answering that question would become the mission of an entire town. West Wendover, a remote strip of land tucked inside Nevada, and home to just over 4,000 people. By nightfall, on March 3rd, nearly all of them would know one thing: Micaela was missing. The moment Celia got home, she grabbed her phone and started calling every friend Micaela had. One by one, same answer. They'd last seen her at school earlier that day, but the more calls she made, the more questions started to spread. Parents, teachers, neighbors, everyone began asking the same thing. Has anyone seen Micaela? By 9 p.m., the news was everywhere. From living rooms to sidewalks to gas stations, the whole town knew, and by 10 p.m., over 80 people were out searching the streets. But in the middle of all that chaos, Celia noticed something no one else had. Javier Trujillo wasn't there, Micaela's boyfriend for over a year and a half. The one who should have been leading the search was nowhere to be found. To Celia, that silence said too much. Either Micaela had told him something no one else knew, or he knew exactly where she was and wasn't saying. So she drove to his house, knocked on the door, and asked him flat out. He claimed he had no idea she was even missing. And in that moment, Celia Costanzo understood something terrifying. This wasn't a problem the family could solve alone. It was time to call the police. That night, just minutes before midnight, Detective Donald Burnham took charge of the case. After speaking with her mother, the picture became clearer. This wasn't a rebellious teenager blowing off steam. This was a disciplined student, a top athlete, a girl who followed the rules and always came home when she said she would. But one detail caught his attention. Micaela's boyfriend, Javier Trujillo, hadn't shown up to the initial search, and when Celia called him that night, he claimed he didn't even know Micaela was missing. To Detective Burnham, that didn't add up. How could a town of 4,000 people know within hours, and her boyfriend be the only one in the dark? That kind of silence isn't just strange, it's suspicious. By the next morning, Javier was sitting across from detectives. He said he hadn't spoken to Micaela. claimed he'd been at work all evening, didn't use his phone, didn't check in, and when asked if it was possible Micaela had run away, he said no, because the one time she did, she told him, left him a voicemail, told him where she was and why she left. Micaela didn't just disappear. That wasn't who she was, and that only made her sudden silence feel even louder. Still, the detectives needed to be sure, so they drove to Javier's job, reviewed the surveillance footage, and confirmed his alibi. He had been working the entire time, with Javier off the suspect list. The question returned, where did Micaela go after she left school that day? To answer that, they pulled her phone records, looking for one name, one number, anything that could lead them closer. And that's when everything shifted, between the end of the school day and the moment Micaela vanished. She contacted the same number over 4 times. Whoever owned that number had to know something. When they traced it, a familiar name came up, Cody Patton. Now the investigation had a new questions. Why had Cody tried so many times to reach Micaela just before she disappeared? And what was Cody hiding? The detectives now had one urgent move to make. Bring Cody in. When Cody sat down with detectives, he looked exhausted. He claimed it was because he'd been out all night, searching for Micaela. To him, Mickey wasn't just another classmate. She was childhood. They'd grown up together, lived in the same building. Their families knew each other. His father even managed the property where Micaela and her family lived. So when detectives asked him the big question, why did you call her? And did you see her that day? Cody didn't deny it. Yes, he called her. He said he needed help lifting heavy car parts. He'd borrowed a friend's vehicle earlier that day, a woman he'd known since elementary school. And now, his own car needed repairs. He claimed none of his guy friends were available, so he messaged Mickey, because she was strong and close by, but she told him she had plans and couldn't stay long. Later that day, he said he saw her again, outside the school. She was standing with someone unfamiliar, a man Cody didn't recognize, someone who didn't look like he belonged in town. Cody waved, said hello, and walked off. To him, it was nothing. To the detectives, it was something. Now there was a new figure, a stranger, someone allegedly with Micaela, moments before she vanished. But as Cody spoke, one of the investigators couldn't shake the feeling. Something in his body language, his voice, it didn't match his words. It was either the voice of someone holding back or someone hiding something darker. To get answers, detectives turned to the students at West Wendover High, and what they heard shattered the version of events Cody had laid out. Almost everyone they spoke to said the same thing. Cody and Micaela weren't close anymore, not since he got engaged to Tony Fratto. In fact, most students said Tony didn't like Micaela at all, because she knew about their brief relationship in the past, and she didn't want Cody and Micaela even speaking. More than that, several classmates revealed that Cody used to bother Micaela. She often tried to avoid him, didn't like being around him, didn't feel comfortable. And then there was Cody's reputation. The tall athlete wasn't exactly seen as kind. He was aggressive, short-tempered, and always seemed to have a new girl around campus. It became clear to investigators Cody's story didn't line up, not with the students, not with his reputation, and maybe not with reality. So they started tracing his movements that day, trying to place him, track him, pin him to something solid, because if Cody was involved, there was still a chance Micaela was alive, and they had to act fast. But before they could move forward, everything changed. A man living near the edge of town spotted something strange in the desert, tire tracks, cutting through open land where no car should be. He followed them out until they ended near a shallow pit. Something didn't look right. He called the police immediately. When officers arrived, they began digging, slow, careful, and then they saw it, a shape, partially buried, human. Detectives halted everything, called in the homicide unit, because now the question wasn't just what happened to Micaela, it was who did it. And in the days to come, investigators would hear 3 different stories, but only one truce, and even that wouldn't explain the one thing that mattered most. Why?
A missing girl, a shallow grave, and now a community anxiously waiting for an identification. A 16-year-old girl was last seen walking out of West Wendover High School on Thursday.
An organized search for her was halted this afternoon when police announced the discovery of the grave about 5 miles outside of Wendover.
A searcher looking near these railroad tracks west of town found what officials are describing as a shallow grave.
From this moment on, multiple teams of investigators were working in parallel, each of them chasing one goal: finding out who took Micaela Costanzo's life. The first team had one mission: compare the tire tracks from the desert with the vehicle used by Cody Patton. He was the last known person to contact her, and his version of events didn't match what the entire school was saying. But there was a complication. The vehicle wasn't his. He'd borrowed it that day. Detectives tracked down the person who owned it. She wasn't just a friend. She was his former music teacher, someone he had known since he was 4 years old. When they asked to examine the car, everything shifted. The vehicle was coated in thick desert dust, like it had just returned from a long off-road trip. And then came the real shock. She told investigators it had rained the day before. A strong storm had practically washed the vehicle clean. But when Cody returned it, it looked like it had been through the desert. That detail changed everything. Detectives impounded the car. They needed to compare the tires to the tracks found near the shallow grave. Meanwhile, another team was inside the high school, reviewing surveillance footage from the day Micaela disappeared. What they saw was a punch to the gut. The cameras showed Micaela walking toward the exit. Just moments later, Cody followed. She wasn't with anyone. She was alone. That destroyed Cody's earlier claim. He had said he saw her outside the school, standing next to a strange man. But the footage didn't lie. She walked out alone, and he was right behind her. Now investigators had 3 damning pieces: phone records that proved he was the last one to speak with her, security footage placing him with her at the school, and forensic results. The dust on the borrowed car matched the desert where Micaela was found, and the tire tracks were identical. It was enough to form a theory. Cody had taken Micaela out into the desert, and she never came back. But still, too many unanswered questions remained. How did it happen? Why? And did Micaela go with him willingly, or was she forced? With no more room for doubt, detectives secured a warrant. Cody Patton would now be brought in, not as a witness, but as a suspect. When Cody Patton entered the interrogation room this time, detectives had one goal: to get the truce, but not by force, by strategy. They didn't start with what they knew. They started with what he claimed to know. They asked him to walk them through the day again, from the last time he saw Micaela to everything that happened after. Then they added something subtle. They told him they couldn't identify the strange man he mentioned, and asked a simple question: who do you think had a reason to hurt Micaela? Without hesitation, he answered: her boyfriend. He said they were always breaking up and getting back together, that they didn't get along. Detectives listened carefully, but what they were really hearing was something else. It was a classic move, the kind of deflection guilty people use to shift the spotlight, blame someone else, lay the foundation for doubt. They waited, let him dig his own hole. Then they brought the facts. They told him they had surveillance footage that placed him at the school, at the exact moment Micaela walked out, that he wasn't far behind her. Cody froze. He asked, "What do you mean?" That's when detectives dropped everything: the phone records, the camera footage, the tire tracks. But Cody still denied it. He insisted Micaela wasn't in his car. What he didn't know was that the crime lab had already confirmed her DNA was inside the vehicle. That was the moment he broke, or so they thought. He started to talk, but the story he gave was far from the truth. He said Micaela had told him during lunch that she still had feelings for him, so he agreed to give her a ride after practice. He picked her up behind the school in the white Trailblazer, and they drove toward a remote spot in the desert, the gravel pit. On the way, he claimed they argued. She asked him to leave his fiancée, Tony. He refused. He said she got upset and started hitting him on the chest, then shoved him in the head. He said he pushed her back and that she hit her head on the rear bumper. He claimed he panicked, tried to wake her, but she didn't respond. He said he checked her pulse, felt nothing, and went into a spiral. He then claimed he grabbed a shovel and struck her on the head because he thought knocking her unconscious would somehow help. Then came the most disturbing part. He admitted to cutting her clothes because he thought it would help her decompose faster. He insisted it wasn't out of disrespect, even though it clearly was. He buried her in a shallow grave, burned some of her belongings, covered the area with branches, and sat there crying for nearly 2 hours before driving home. As he spoke, detectives were stunned, but just then, the autopsy report came in, and it changed everything. The story Cody told was nothing more than a lie, a story full of broken logic and emotional theatrics, because the autopsy showed something he couldn't explain. Micaela had deep marks on both wrists, clear signs she'd been restrained with cable ties, which meant one thing: she didn't go with him willingly. There was no argument in the car, and she didn't hit him because she never had the chance. She was taken, forced. Once faced with the new forensic evidence, detectives arrested Cody, not as a confused young man in shock, but as the prime suspect in a brutal crime. But even as the case seemed clear, one question remained. Why? Was it love, obsession, revenge, or something darker? At that moment, they still believed Cody would eventually give them the answer, but they were wrong because the truth, the real motive, was about to come from someone else entirely, and that person was about to take center stage. After Cody was arrested, he was placed in Elko County Jail, a small detention center tucked away in Elko County, Nevada. Detectives now had one mission: build a case strong enough to expose every lie he had told. From the start, they believed his story didn't just have holes. It was a complete fabrication. They worked on a theory that Micaela had been taken against her will, bound, and driven deep into the desert. But one detail never fit. Cody claimed he hit her with a shovel, yet the autopsy said something different. The wound on her neck, clean, precise, and caused by a sharp, narrow object, far more consistent with a small blade than a wide metal spade. So investigators began searching for weeks, looking for the weapon that actually ended Micaela's life. But they found nothing. Then everything shifted. John Olson, Cody's lawyer, contacted police, said he had new information, something that could affect the entire case. Detectives assumed it was a ploy, a last-ditch effort to reduce Cody's sentence, maybe avoid the death penalty. But what they didn't expect was this. The lawyer had a recording, a confession, from someone else, someone who said she was there. Tony Fratto, Cody's fiancée. She had walked into her fiancé's attorney's office, sat down, and admitted the unthinkable. She said she was with Cody on the day Micaela vanished. According to her, Micaela started arguing with Cody because he told her he wasn't going to leave Tony. She said Micaela grabbed him, and in the heat of the moment, Tony pushed her to get her off him. Micaela fell to the ground. Tony sat on her legs, trying to calm the situation, but Micaela started moving again, and that's when the panic kicked in. Tony said, "I didn't know what to do. It felt like everything was spiraling." She claimed Cody told her to hit Micaela with the shovel, and she did, struck her on the head. Tony said she wasn't sure if Micaela was still alive, but she was silent and not moving. Then she described something else. Cody pulled out a knife and cut her at the neck. After that, Tony helped him cover it up, burned Micaela's clothes, buried her body, and walked away. She thought she was protecting Cody, that her confession might ease the weight of the charges against him. But she didn't realize something crucial. Everything she said lined up exactly with what the autopsy had revealed. The binding marks, the sharp cut to the neck, the way the body was found. By trying to protect him, she had confirmed the very evidence that proved them both guilty. Once investigators heard the tape, they arrested Tony Fratto. From that moment forward, the case wasn't just about Cody. It became a battle on two fronts: the Costanzo family against both Cody Patton and Tony Fratto. But there was one final twist. Tony hadn't known she was being recorded. She thought it was a private conversation between her and Cody's lawyer. Worse, she had gone to the meeting with Cody's father. To her family, that felt like a betrayal. They believed it was Cody's father who convinced Tony to confess. Now, it wasn't just one family dealing with grief. It was three families at war. When Tony's family found out about her confession, they were blindsided, not just by what she said, but by how it happened. She had confessed while they were out of town, with Cody's father beside her. The first thing they did was hire a defense attorney, someone who could do damage control. But they had no idea that two things were already in motion. Detectives had begun digging through Tony's life, every message, every call, every detail, and at the same time, Cody's lawyer was preparing to use her confession as leverage to reduce his client's sentence. Then came the message, a single line Cody had sent to Tony just as Micaela was being taken. "I got her." To detectives, it meant everything. The crime wasn't spontaneous. It was planned, premeditated. Cody's repeated calls weren't just obsession. They were tracking, stalking, and now there was a risk that Cody might claim Tony was the one who carried it all out, that she had done the unthinkable, and he had only helped cover it up. For Tony's family, it was a nightmare. Not only did this prove she was there, it confirmed she was involved, and under Nevada law, that meant the death penalty was back on the table. But her lawyer had a different narrative. He portrayed her as vulnerable, controlled, manipulated by Cody from the start. He presented evidence, a security tape from school, showing Cody physically assaulting Tony, an attack she never reported because she loved him, because she didn't want to ruin his chance at joining the Marines. Suddenly, Tony wasn't just a co-conspirator. She was a victim. But Cody's father had his own plan. He hired a private investigator, and what that investigator found changed the game again. He got into Tony's room, found her personal journals, pages filled with jealousy, obsession, and one clear message: Micaela needed to disappear. There were also witnesses, people who said Tony was the dominant one in the relationship, not Cody. Even Micaela's own siblings testified that Tony controlled him. She didn't want him near Micaela, because Micaela was everything Tony wasn't: pretty, popular, powerful in her presence. And then Cody flipped. He told his third version of the story. This time, he said Tony was the one who made him lure Micaela to the desert. That, once they got there, Tony hit her with the shovel, then used a knife. He only helped afterward, to burn the clothes, to bury the body. But Tony's lawyer pushed back hard. He said it was nonsense, that Tony wrote angry things once, but words weren't actions. He made a point of saying Tony had won Miss Teen Wendover at just 13, but I think he left out the part where there wasn't much of a contest. Let's just say she didn't beat the competition. There simply wasn't any. By the end, each legal team had drawn its battle lines. In May 2012, he pleaded guilty. It was a deal to avoid death row. He received life in prison without the possibility of parole. He will die behind bars. Tony Fratto, after admitting her full role, helping burn clothes and bury the body, took a plea deal. She testified against Cody and was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 18 years. Her first parole hearing came in February 2021. It was denied. The next was scheduled for May 2024. Today, Cody Patton sits in Ely State Prison, while Tony continues serving her sentence in a women's correctional facility in Nevada. But the story doesn't end with convictions, or prison bars, or legal arguments, because the real question still echoes in the silence they left behind. Why was Micaela killed?
No, why? There's no justification for it. It's just a game. Sorry, it's not enough, but I apologize for everything.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime documentaries. See you in the next video.